Good afternoon, and welcome to our presentation, Be a More Connected Manufacturer. My name is Travis Hessman, and I'm the Technology Editor for Industry Week, which is producing this event. Today's webinar is sponsored by Google. Now, during today's webinar, you'll hear from Reggie Lau, TEI Consultant at Forrester, Elliot, Senior Director, Enterprise Applications at Sanmina, and Julia Town, Head of Manufacturing Industry at Google, as they discuss the ways collaborative and mobile technologies are changing the manufacturing environment. At Industry Week, our mission is to connect manufacturing decision makers to share ideas and tools that inspire action. We strive to provide information that helps you make better decisions to achieve your goals. Today's webinar brings together members of the manufacturing community to discuss strategic and operational issues. Before we get started today, I'd just like to address a few housekeeping items so everyone is connected. Now, as part of this webinar, we will have a live Q&A session at the end. Our speakers will address as many questions as they can during the last portion of the event. And to improve your chances of your question being addressed, please don't wait to the end of the event to submit them. Rather, we ask that you submit them to us as they occur to you. To send in your question, just type it into the Ask a Question box, then click the Submit button. And whenever possible, please direct your question to a specific speaker. Now, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be available to you on demand after it's recorded. Now, we encourage you to direct your coworkers to the recorded presentation. You'll receive an email with a link to the on-demand version in a few days. The recording will also be available on IndustryWeek.com website in our webinars area. Now, we ask that you please disable your pop-up blockers during this event. If you're using Internet Explorer, you can disable your pop-up blocker by going into the Tools menu, clicking Internet Options, and then choosing the Privacy tab at the top. Then looking at the widget bar at the bottom of your console, you'll see icons that allow you to open and close windows on your screen. The widgets in red were automatically opened when you entered the webinar. Those include the slide area, audio controls, speaker information, and the Ask Question box. Next, the blue icons are your opportunity to get social. This webinar allows you to take full advantage of your social networking. We encourage you to share your thoughts with your LinkedIn communities, send tweets to your followers, or post comments to your Facebook page. You can also send an email to a friend encouraging them to check out this webinar. Just click the icon in the widget bar to launch each feature. Next, the green icons are tools that you might want to use. You can download a copy of the presenter's slides as a PDF so you can save or print them. The green checkmark button launches the survey. We'll also push the survey out to you as we approach the end of the event. The green question mark brings up a series of troubleshooting tips. Now, also, this webinar allows you to have it your way. You can customize your webcast console. Just drag the title bar to move windows. Minimize a window by clicking the blue button or maximize it with the green. You can also resize most windows by dragging the lower right corner. And finally, if the slides stop advancing for any reason, or if you're having problems with the audio, try pressing the F5 key at the top of the keyboard. That'll refresh the webinar console on your screen. All right. Now, taking that, I'll introduce our first speaker today. And that will be Julia Town, Head of Manufacturing Industry at Google. Julia has a career of over 20 years in the enterprise information technology industry. She spent 12 of them with Documentum EMC, where she was one of the early innovators of Documentum. And she spent the last 5 at Google helping the global manufacturing accounts. So, with that, I'll send it off to you, Julia.
Thank you for that introduction, Travis. So I am delighted to be here with you, and thank you all for joining. Talking to companies about Google is my favorite part of this job. So as well as a career working with manufacturers, I actually grew up in a small manufacturing town in Indiana with 2 blue-collar parents, and I've seen firsthand how manufacturing has changed so much over the years. So it's personally important to me to help you guys be successful. So hopefully we at Google can help you do that. Because we are Google, we get a chance to talk with many of the world's largest manufacturers. What we found was that there's a lot of disconnects in some of the most important ways that they do business. Things like version control problems with email attachments, or even an over-reliance on email in place of face-to-face communication. The way they use technologies make work difficult, inefficient, and really expensive. And we've all been there. Finding the most recent version of that key document, or flying people around the world for a 1-hour meeting, trying to coordinate global launches over a simple spreadsheet, and so forth. But then, at the same time, in our personal lives with consumer, social, and mobile technology, we're more connected than we've ever been before. Google is all about enabling this kind of connection and collaboration, and it fits perfectly with manufacturing needs, so at all levels of the organization, from the executive suite to suppliers to the factory floor and fulfillment. A connected manufacturer shouldn't have to deal with the difficulties, inefficiencies, and cost of inefficient collaboration in their day-to-day work. So let's take, for example, the new product development process and keeping product managers, marketers, and supply chain on the same page, or making lean manufacturing processes even leaner with improved production efficiency, or arming an international sales team with the most current, relevant information in their language that they can understand, or easing mergers and acquisitions with easy-to-find and editable legal and financial documents. A connected manufacturer also more closely meets changing employee expectations around how they get their work done. More and more employees expect the same ease of use and access that they get with technology at home. When 98% of Americans own a mobile device and 95% use cloud services in their consumer lives, it's clear the shift is on. We are more connected than ever before, and so we believe manufacturers must be connected to succeed. So on the next slide, this brings us to why Google. Google is the glue that can bring your company together and help you leverage these behaviors and challenges for your benefit. From our consumer heritage of innovation, building industry-favorite apps like Search, Gmail, and Maps that are easy to use with little to almost no training required, to our massive scale that can accommodate any size enterprise, our solutions are built on highly available and secure infrastructure. We have a reliable platform and provide a gold standard in enterprise 24/7 support, as well as 99.9% uptime guarantees. And at Google, we take security very seriously. We have an information security team of over 300 people, including some of the world's leading security researchers, who regularly contribute tools and research to the security community. So on the next slide, let's talk about what Google understands about manufacturing. Aside from talking to manufacturers about what they need, it may surprise you to learn that we at Google are manufacturers ourselves. We are in the top 5 computer hardware manufacturers, and we build them exclusively for our own massive data centers and infrastructure. Since manufacturing has become such a part of our business, we really need to be efficient for us to be successful. So by working with the world's largest manufacturers, as well as innovating our own manufacturing processes, we have created some great business products and solutions that we can offer to help other manufacturers as well, like you. So on the next slide, we'll talk about why innovation has been key to our success at Google. Google is known for innovation. We're so proud of what we do and the innovations and the positive change that comes from Google. Things like Android. So Google powers some of the coolest phones in the world, used by over 750 million people worldwide. Or, for example, the self-driving car. This is some pretty futuristic stuff, and we hope one day to end traffic jams. Or Google Glass. Imagine overlaying the world's information on your day-to-day, moment-to-moment life through your eyeglasses. It's an entirely different way to see the world, and one I personally hope comes with new and more stylish frames. So now on to the next slide. Let's talk about our enterprise products. Of course, the point here isn't that we're going to end traffic jams, although that would be nice. It's that Google is always innovating and building the best possible products we can. We have taken those innovative best practices for collaboration and bringing quality products to market and incorporated them into our enterprise products we offer to you. This suite of products can help you become that connected manufacturer we've been talking about. We start with Google Apps, which includes email, calendar, contacts, video conferencing, docs, and more. This suite, which you will hear more about from our speakers today, helps employees connect, create, and collaborate in real time. Then we have Google Maps to allow everyone in your ecosystem to visualize important information on a map. You can also integrate your data with Google Maps, recognize patterns, make decisions, and share insights. Next, our cloud platform that powers Google is also available for you to build and run your own apps. Google Cloud Platform lets you build applications, websites, store data, analyze data on Google's own infrastructure. This is the power of Google Scale at your fingertips. And Google Search, which isn't just for the web. It's also for your company. Whether inside your firewall or your website, employees and customers can find what they need fast. And then finally, there's Chrome, which both our browser, OS, as well as the hardware provides simple, fast, and secure access to the cloud. So in the next slide, we discuss using these cool tools to connect your business with Google. Hopefully, you got a little bit of insight into Google and our products and what being a connected manufacturer really means. Now think about being a connected manufacturer can help you with faster product development, providing better customer service, increasing your overall operational efficiency, and driving higher sales through collaboration. Now, there are many organizations doing this already today with Google. So in the next slide, you can see that going Google is already a movement. As you think about what it can do for your business, know that millions of businesses have already gone Google. It's a movement that encompasses more than 5 million businesses and hundreds of millions of users globally. It includes everything from startups to Fortune 500 companies, household names like Best Buy, Costco, and Lowe's. And on the next slide, you can see it's something that manufacturers are already using as well, such as Roche, Sanmina, Lexmark, Honeywell, just to name a few. So today we have Sanmina here to talk about why they chose Google, the innovation they saw, and what it's like to be a connected manufacturer. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to hearing your questions after you've heard from Reggie and Elliot. Now, Travis, back to you.
Hey, thanks, Julia. That was great. Now, we're going to move this on to our next presenter. It's Elliot Talley, Senior Director of Enterprise Applications at Sanmina. Now, Elliot is an experienced IT leader with a passion for clean code and team building. In addition to internal R&D activities at Sanmina, Elliot's team administers the company's collaboration tools, and that includes Google Apps for Business and the Google Android platforms. So, take it away, Elliot.
Thanks, Travis. Thank you for that introduction, too. I wanted to start with a little bit of background about Sanmina as a company before I launch into what our problem statement was before we went Google, what the process looked like, and what the results have been. Most people think of Sanmina purely as a contract manufacturing company, but besides manufacturing, we have divisions that focus on reverse logistics, repair, and engineering design, and our Viking and Nuisis subsidiaries are product companies designing and selling memory modules and high-end storage arrays. We do all of that, and it leads to big challenges in the collaboration space. Next slide, please. Before we started our Google migration project, we interviewed a number of business leaders and end users spanning divisions, and we compiled a list of collaboration requirements. We came up with 4 basic categories. The first was engineering project management for collaborative product design. As I mentioned before, we do quite a bit of ODM and JDM design work, and it was really troublesome for those engineers and product leaders to keep track of documents and project schedules via email or FTP. The second thing we wanted to solve was M&A, documentation, process, project management, similar types of problems, just in a different area. Within IT, as drivers of this project, we had similar issues with information organization, document management, and product control. We wanted to help ourselves. And finally, we looked for a vendor that could help us via platform to extend internal development projects for process automation and data collection using surveys, etc. We looked at Google and Google Apps to see if we could leverage their platform and apps to meet everyone's needs. Next slide, please. There's no avoiding this, but cost savings and the hard ROI was the primary driver. Collaboration was one thing, but money was big too. And we started looking at Google Apps and Gmail to replace our Exchange environment in 2008. Our messaging and calendaring systems were distributed for guaranteed uptime, and they required a lot of support and maintenance. Even backup tapes were consuming hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Because we were entering the final year of an EA with Microsoft, it made sense for us to look at other options. And after much analysis and previous internal experience with practically every mail platform in existence, the cloud made more sense than anything on-premise, and Google was the only vendor that offered a mature collaboration suite at the time. Long story short, we saved $1.7 million in hardware, software licensing, and support as a result of going Google. Next slide, please. We ran an IT pilot from December 2008 to May 2009, and we used that time to compile change management and user education materials and decide whether or not this was really something that would make sense for the whole company. We made the go, no-go decision in September of 2009, and we moved our largest campus in 1 week. As a result of the smoothness of that process, we decided to quickly proceed with the rest of the company and moved everyone else in Q4 of 2009 with very few hiccups. We made a strategic decision to eat our own dog food during this migration process, and we used Google Sites and Docs for all of the educational and training materials that we put together. Even then, even with the experience of Sites and Docs, within IT, the hard ROI was still the driver, and the collaboration tools were just a side benefit. Next slide, please. This may or may not surprise you, but we only have 2 people whose full-time job is to support email and Google Apps. One of them supports mail and mail routing full-time. One of them supports our collaboration suite. We've got a third person who spends about half his time with user provisioning issues and identity management, but nothing of consequence. This tiny support and admin team is a dramatic reduction from what we had before, which was a dedicated team of about 15 people who supported our global Active Directory plus email plus identity management infrastructure. As you saw in the previous slide, we had 112 Exchange servers. We've shrunk that down to 4. After going Google, we reallocated a bunch of local IT support staff and several corporate team members to focus on more value-added projects. And I'm very happy to say no one was let go as a result of this change. Next slide. One of the use cases unique to our sector, manufacturing, is a requirement to control process flow and collect critical manufacturing data in real time. We've got a fantastic homegrown suite of manufacturing execution systems that were already written in Java. So when we switched to Google, we started hearing from developers about targeting Android as a platform for some of their apps. Over the last year, we initiated a project that's allowed us to replace a couple thousand dumb data collectors and expensive PCs with commodity Android tablets, all running our MES. The advantage? Now we have one Android plus browser-based interface for all our manufacturing systems. And as Julia said, users can access reporting and production tracking systems from their own personal Android phones too. This opened the door for us to think about other perks of using Android as a platform. Next slide, please. We started thinking about BYOD and MDM in early 2012 and implemented a policy about a year later, this past January. This was partly tied to our Android MES project I just mentioned, but also a response to the more general demand for smartphones within the company. Before we implemented BYOD, we had about 900 BlackBerries under management. Now, we have about 1,000 Android and iOS devices controlled using Google's MDM, and a number of plants are wholesale replacing all their BlackBerries and dumb phones with Android devices. We expect probably 3,000 to 4,000 Android and iOS devices to be enrolled by the end of this year. Smartphones don't solve problems on their own, though, and we had to start thinking about mobile application development. Android was a natural target, and we just rolled out our first 2 apps. One was a systems and infrastructure monitoring app powered by Nagios that we were already using, and the second is a generic workflow app with modules planned for a number of business processes. Next slide. I mentioned at the beginning that M&A documentation and project management had been a challenge for us prior to our migration. Since then, though, we've replaced the bulky email attachments and unwieldy FTP systems with Google Drive, which, besides the obvious, has had a couple of handy perks. One, it's centralized, It acts as a single source of truth through the discovery process and through the M&A planning and execution projects. Second, as we learn important lessons or tweak the process, it's very easy for us to reference and repurpose previously used docs as templates for brand new work. The use of docs in sites has saved innumerable hours and has made collaboration projects involving people who don't actually know each other or may have never met much easier. Next slide, please. I mentioned before that our first IT use case was creating a site and docs for change management and employee communications during the Gmail deployment, but we heard about our first business case only a few weeks later. One of the product engineering groups was fed up using FTP and email to collaborate with customers, so they shared a sites template they created and a number of docs templates inside it. When we opened a discussion about whether or not we should allow external sharing, they were quite vocally in favor, and within a few months, their new processes and templates had infiltrated the whole division. Consequently, all IT projects are managed the same way now, and we've added a couple of third-party apps, Lucidchart and Ganter, from the marketplace to further enhance the suite. Before our migration to Google Apps, communication challenges with globally dispersed teams caused cycle time delays, dirty data, and broken feedback loops. And even though we knew that, we didn't realize how big an impact Google Apps would have. Next slide, please. I mentioned at the beginning that the hard ROIs were our driver and the collaboration tools were secondary, and we're very happy with the cost savings. But if you ask me now, I'd sing a different tune entirely. Just to give you an idea, here are some statistics. We currently have about 700,000 docs, 3,500 sites, and 3,000 groups in our domain, and more than 85% of our users own at least one doc. Each of those 700,000 docs is shared on average between 3 people, and we have more than 35,000 docs shared into our domain by other Google Apps customers. It turned out that a lot of our customers, suppliers, and vendors were also Apps customers already, and this has provided a very smooth way for us to collaborate with them. We're starting to see employees asking for expanded drive quota because they're moving even more of their work life to the cloud. And we're piloting Google Plus to further expand the social aspect, and Hangouts have supplanted Skype as the tool of choice for quick and easy video conferencing. Moving to Google Apps and the general consumerization of IT have opened the eyes of employees to think about technology as an enabler in different ways than they ever have before, and we've been extremely happy with our decision. Back to you, Travis.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Elliot. So I guess now we're going to turn it over to our final speaker for the day, Reggie Lau. Reggie is a Forrester Total Economic Impact, or TEI, consultant. He has been a project director for multiple TEI case studies for a range of different technologies, spanning from B2B social media products to modern software as a service marketing solutions. So, take it away, Reggie.
All right, thank you, Travis. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Forrester Total Economic Impact portion of today's webinar. Again, my name is Reggie Lau, a TEI consultant at Forrester and also the project director for this case study. Now, if we move on to the next slide, here's a quick look at what we'll cover in the next 15 or so minutes. We'll set the stage first with what exactly is total economic impact. After the stage is set, we'll run through the high-level summary findings of the case study we conducted. We'll then look at some of the specific benefits for both IT users and business users and the dollar value of each benefit. Of course, we'll also balance the picture and show you some of the expected costs. And finally, before we end with the financial summary, we'll make this presentation even more specific to you by spotlighting the experience and critical path that a manufacturing customer took in their implementation of Google Apps for their enterprise. Let's go to the next slide. So the question we get asked most often when we start with these webinars is, so what exactly is total economic impact? TEI is a Forrester methodology that focuses on quantifying the value of a solution. We bring in 4 basic components: benefits, costs, flexibility, and risk, to arrive at the total economic impact. As you can see, by looking at more than just how much a solution costs and comparing fees, we're going beyond a traditional total cost of ownership or TCO analysis. On the other side of the scale, To enable an ROI analysis, we need to look at the benefits of a solution as well, not just cost savings and avoidances, but also the efficiencies and how much more effective your staff can be when using Google Apps. We also factor in flexibility or options that a customer may get in the future. This future value is important to consider when enterprises think about scalability, future features and functions that a platform may develop, and different use cases that the enterprise may deploy. And finally, we overlay it with the risk adjustments because we know not every engagement will go perfectly as planned. The actual process is rigorous but relatively simple. We speak with Forrester's subject matter expert in this technology space. We're going to speak with Google's experts to build a foundation for the questions we'll ask their customers. Typically, next we'll conduct 4 customer interviews, but for this case specifically, we increased the rigorous level, and we conducted a 200 response survey, 5 in-depth interviews, and we also pulled in results from a larger 12-interview, 600 response study conducted in 2010. Now, that kind of just means we went kind of way over the bar in terms of the rigor. So any figures and numbers you see today are kind of based on that data in the survey. Once we have the data, we'll construct a financial model and develop a case study based on the composite organization or the quote-unquote grouped experience of Google Apps. Let's move to the next slide. Well, with the TEI stage set for you, let's dig right into the high-level summary of this case study. Throughout the next several slides I'm going to present, I will highlight key takeaways on each slide. But if we had to boil it down to a one-liner or a one-slider, here it is. Google Apps saves IT costs and boosts collaboration. Based on our interviews and surveys of organizations that use Google Apps, which include the different modules at the bottom of this slide, we found that the composite organization experiences a 3-year risk-adjusted ROI of 329%, a $10.1 million net present value, and a 1.4-month payback period. Now, we'll talk about more about the individual benefits and costs that make this case in just a bit, but it's important to note here while I still have some of your first impression. As you can see on the top right, the value of Google Apps is not just in IT savings and avoidance, in buying and maintaining more hardware, but a large part of the $13.2 million benefit over 3 years is rooted in end-user productivity and collaboration. Next slide, please. So let's start with that, productivity and end-user benefits. As you may suspect, yes, most customers migrated to Google Apps for the cloud messaging platform, but they also found added value in the collaboration pieces as well. From our survey, 69% of end users, not your typical IT administrators, but business users, 69% of them said single sign-on is a benefit, and 39% noted they were more efficient because they can move between a mail application to a document application without losing context. Let's unwrap that benefit just a little bit. Let's start from the yellow slice of the pie, app-to-app synergies. This is the overall benefit that end users noted in being able to save time and work faster because they're working within the same application suite or browser. They're not waiting for a separate local application to open on their laptop when they're opening an attachment in an email. And at the same time, they're not losing context when switching from one user interface to another. The next 2 slices going down clockwise, filtering and search, those are the minutes saved each day by not having to filter out spam and being able to quickly search through past emails and even documents on Drive or contacts. And speaking of Drive, holding meetings became more efficient because participants came to meetings prepared with the latest and greatest versions of their documents on Drive. Now, for now, let's skip that gray slice. Let's skip the IT impact slice for now because we have a whole separate slide for it. But the biggest end user piece, internal collaboration. There were so many different use cases and benefits in here that we had to group it together. This blue slice includes things like minutes saved from project tracking with internal and external teams, file sharing, and editing documents real-time with multiple authors. Now, when we built this composite organization and this model, we assumed an 18,000-person organization. And while headcount and the percentage efficiency gains or minutes saved that we got from our survey are important to the model, I'll leave you with 2 other key metrics to consider. 1, percentage of impacted staff. We know that not every employee will adopt Google Apps quickly, and not everyone has the same use case for each benefit. We didn't apply minutes saved to the whole 18,000 person organization, only to an impacted portion. The second metric, productivity conversion. We know that not every minute saved is a minute put back into productive work. We know there are distractions at work, from coffee breaks to petabytes of videos online. So for every minute saved, only a portion of it is converted into productivity. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Now on to the IT impact and savings. Again, while this is only 26% of the total benefits pie, an aging on-prem messaging system with growing maintenance costs is usually the driver and the reason that customers migrate to Google Apps. And the survey results underline those migration reasons, with 44% reduction in license costs, 42% reduction in infrastructure spend, and an overall decrease in maintenance hours. IT savings are fairly straightforward, and we already kind of talked about the first three slices here in administrative support, license spend, and infrastructure spend. This last red slice here, internal site setup, speaks to the time that your IT staff are using to help business users set up, monitor, and maintain internal sites, or even just file sharing repositories. Similar to the end user benefits, we apply a productivity conversion rate here for minutes saved in maintenance and site setup. The other two key metrics to note here, as suspected, would be your spend for on-premise hardware and annual license costs. Now let's move on to the next slide. Since we're talking about IT cost saving, let's look at the other side of the equation in terms of budgeting and expense and costs. In our model, the composite organization grows, which is why the licensing cost increases each year, as you can see. But in addition to license costs, there are also other upfront costs to budget for, including change management, testing, piloting and implementation, and initial support. Now let me note two of the key items here. First, change management. Remember that in addition to technical aspects and data migration, customers also need to develop policy, training documentation, and organization-wide communications. When customers execute or deploy a pilot, beta, or champions program, they find that budgeting time and effort away for this has been very helpful in a very accurate forecasted budget. Second item here to note, there will be likely an initial spike in support needs or help desk tickets during the migration period, which is usually roughly the first or 2 months of migration. Now if we move on to the next slide, before we kind of end with showing you the financial summary again, let's talk briefly about the experience that one of our interviewees in the manufacturing space had. Let's spotlight this large global manufacturer who we interviewed. The two benefits that this customer noted as particularly helpful were Google Sites and space savings. This manufacturer used Google Sites to facilitate collaboration and communication not only internally, but with external vendors and suppliers, easily reducing the amount of emails that their managers needed to send and receive each day. And space savings, not only less IT infrastructure and the related maintenance costs, but also real estate, material space, and related power and cooling as the hardware was retired. Now, as critical paths go, here are some risks or items to keep in mind for a successful implementation. Email migration and single sign-on setup were time-intensive. The manufacturing customer we interviewed expected this and set up a process where executives would be migrated first, then all others with email addresses in production facilities second. And they applied the same process for their mobility strategy. Now let's talk about adoption. Adoption and end-user training was also on the radar. And being able to anticipate and mitigate helped this customer achieve a 71% adoption rate. They had as many people using Google Docs by the second month as there were people using Calendar. Real-time collaboration and opening Docs without opening a separate application were key adoption points for this customer. And keep in mind, this customer migrated in 2009, when change management programs and system integration partners were not as sophisticated with cloud messaging platform deployments as they are today. Now lastly, in terms of flexibility or future growth, this manufacturing customer is looking forward to three things in particular the most: adopting video conferencing, using Google Plus and social as an alternative for email and as another way to reduce the amount of emails that their managers have to take in each day, and taking on mobile in earnest by deploying mobile apps. Now let's summarize a little on the next and last slide. So based on the benefits and costs that we presented today, after adjusting for risk and including a 10% discount rate, because dollars tomorrow are not worth the same today, the 3-year present value of the benefits is $13.2 million and costs us $3.1 million, as you can see in the chart in the bottom. Now this leaves us with a net present value of $10.1 million, which represents the 329% ROI based on the upfront investment, and only 1.4 months before recouping that upfront investment. And these figures, along with the individual benefits, costs, risks, and flexibility we highlighted today, is the total economic impact of Google Apps. This concludes my portion of the webinar today, and let me now hand it back over to Travis.
Excellent. That was a lot of great information, Reggie. Thank you very much. So, okay, we're going to go into the Q&A portion of the event now. Before we dive in, I'd just like to recap what we've covered today. And today we heard from Julietown about Google Enterprise Solutions, so you can put your business on the road to become a truly connected manufacturer. And we also heard from Elliot at Sanmina on how moving to Google Apps and the general consumerization of IT have opened the eyes of employees to think about technology as an enabler in different ways than ever before. And of course, we just had Reggie Lau from Forrester on how Google Apps is helping workers become more productive and to save manufacturers money. It's great content today. Now, before we get started with the questions, I just want to remind you to please take a few moments to fill out our feedback form. We ask you, of course, to disable your pop-up blockers so that it'll come through when we send it out. Now, on to the Q&A. Now, the first question is going out to Elliot. So we're just wondering, how do you manage provisioning the Android tablets?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and it plays into sort of one of the benefits of Google as a platform and Android that we didn't discuss. We have two different types of Android devices that we deploy. One is the shop floor tablets, and one are personal devices. Personal devices are just off-the-shelf consumer hardware controlled through our BYOD policy and Google's MDM. For the shop floor tablets, though, we needed something that was going to be tough enough to withstand factory floor, 24/7 use by employees who are not particularly careful. And so what we did was go to some local manufacturers near our Shenzhen software development operation, find someone who would manufacture a tablet per our specifications with the right I/O ports. And we built our own ROM based on the Android open source project AOSP that included only the apps that we want people to have, which were the things that support our manufacturing execution systems, mail and calendar, and a browser. That's about it. So we have complete control of the hardware and the software.
Excellent. More for you. They're wondering, do you allow BYOD, bring your device, for your staff? And if so, how do you administer their usage?
Sure. So as you might expect, policy comes first, then technology. So we went through quite a lengthy process with internal and external legal counsel in a number of countries where we have operations to make sure that we could come up with a BYOD policy that would offer the security and flexibility that we needed to be able to empower people to use things other than the BlackBerries or dumb phones they were accustomed to. Once that was out of the way, we trialed a couple of commercial options for MDM. We tested Google's own offering, which is free with Google Apps. We tested a couple others as well. And what we found was that even though Google's offering is not nearly as full-featured as some of the commercial choices, it's free, and it does the most important things, and it does them consistently well. So it's a no-brainer for us to choose that in round one. As we continue with our global deployment, we'll probably revisit that choice just to re-ascertain that it was the correct one, but we've been very happy so far.
Okay, good. It looks like we're just going to be talking to you for a little while. I hope that's okay. This next one comes in. How do you get around the security concerns with sharing with business partners?
Training, education. We started with a closed environment. We didn't allow external sharing. There was an uproar before long, and we spent quite a bit of time interviewing the people that said they needed this for their jobs, and we put together some educational materials to make sure that they knew how to handle internal IP and other sensitive data in a secure way. It helped that we already have a couple of business divisions that are governed by different regulations than standard. We have a defense and aerospace division. We do some medical device manufacturing design too. So it was not outlandish for employees to understand that there were things they could do with data and things they couldn't do. And to date, we haven't really had any problems. Everyone is conscientious. We also use the OU facilities in Google Apps to only give the right users access to the right things. So some people have more flexibility than others.
Good. Here's an interesting one. Did you migrate away from like the Microsoft Office suite tools or SharePoint when you moved to extensive use of Google? And if so, what were the major challenges you ran into?
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about this when I drove to the office this morning, kind of hoping someone would ask this question. Because from the presentation, it doesn't really, it is a pretty gaping hole in information there. So part of the hard ROI we recognized and part of the strategy we had to go Google was to reduce our Microsoft Office footprint, including Project and Visio too, as much as we could in a feasible way that wouldn't cause continuity problems or too much disruption. So what we did when we moved everyone to Gmail was we moved their active inbox from the Exchange server. We moved their local contacts and calendar from Exchange and from their local Outlook instance. And then we removed Outlook from their PC. They no longer had Outlook. We also, as a sort of parallel project, tried to find as many PCs as we could where we could remove Microsoft Office entirely. And we ended up removing it from about 4,500 out of roughly 20,000 PCs. So there was quite a bit of cost savings there as well.
Good. I guess we can follow up on the cost savings one. One came in. So which use case in Sanmina has resulted in the highest savings and the most revenue generated?
I'd say that the most immediate impact and the biggest savings was actually the reduction in tape purchases. We had not just 112 Exchange servers, but we had 112 file servers that folks at each of those local sites were using as their home drive for all their local document storage and their workspace. And all of that was backed up. As we moved everyone off of Outlook and Exchange, we repurposed those machines or decommissioned them and forced people to move their productivity into the cloud much more than they ever had before. So that was probably number one. Number two then was the hardware decommissioning and lack of support requirements. And then third was the software side and software licensing with Microsoft. That was the lowest cost impact of the three.
Good. I'll give you a break for a minute. There's plenty coming in for you. I'll get you let you get some water. So I have a couple questions here for Reggie. First, how do you quantify things like productivity benefits?
Sure. So we have the benefit of having conducted the survey and interviews, but for individual organizations, I would say take our case studies efficiency gains or the minutes saved for each benefit and apply it to your organization's headcount or the amount of impacted staff. who use Google Apps or use it in the way that they'll be able to be more collaborative and more productive. And then also apply that productivity conversion rate that makes sense for you. If you've blocked entertainment websites in your organization, maybe the productivity conversion rate is a little bit higher. By default, TEI typically sets it to 50%, which means if a user saves about 5 minutes a day, then 2.5 minutes goes back to work. 2.5 minutes is not productive. They can, leave work earlier or get a coffee break. Now, the reason why productivity numbers kind of multiply and get bigger is because you have to apply a per hour loaded salary to these hours saved, right? So you can get a tailored productivity savings figure for yourself. Now, if that number still looks big and you think maybe it looks a little bit too big, here's 3 steps that we usually take in TEI. First, obviously, check your math. We do, but it's usually not the arithmetic. 2, adjust for risk. What are the chances that a cost will be higher than expected, or what are the chances that a benefits will be lower than expected? Based on that, take a discount on that productivity benefit. And lastly, just remember, if this still looks big, a minute saved here or there, added up over a year and multiplied by hundreds or thousands of people in your organization and their salaries, is a lot of dollars. So big productivity gains, while not as tangible as incremental revenue or retiring servers, they're real and a big component of these collaboration solutions.
Excellent, thank you. Also, you mentioned app-to-app synergy. Could you explain what that is exactly?
Sure. So I think we talked a little bit about this during the presentation. App-to-app synergy is really not having to wait, loading another application that's usually local on a user's laptop, not having to lose context when working on the same project, same work product, because you have to move from one user interface to another user interface. And remember, when a lot of users, when they're waiting for an application to load up or moving from one user interface to another, and as simple as going from email to a Word document, they're likely to take a break. So think about taking one less break. That's 5 to 6 minutes there. Take the productivity conversion, multiply it out by your entire organization or the impacted staff. That's part of that productivity gain, specific for app-to-app synergy.
Good, thank you. All right, I think we're going to bounce back to you now, Elliot. Did you see any reductions in network traffic when you made the transition?
No, we didn't see any reductions. We were expecting to see a pretty significant increase in network traffic. Like a lot of global organizations, I suspect quite a few of the listeners can relate to this. We have pretty small ISP circuits at a lot of our remote sites, but pretty nice MPLS connections between our sites internally. We used to be able to rely on those MPLS circuits for a lot of this kind of traffic, but we knew that moving to the cloud, we were going to be dependent on the ISP connections to a lot greater extent. So we did quite a bit of network traffic analysis, and we worked with Google to get some of their input on previous experiences with similar customers in similar places. And it actually didn't end up being much of a deal at all. For mail calendar and apps in general, we didn't see any appreciable increase in network consumption. The only thing that has caused, not problems, but caused us to be a little more aware is with our Google Plus pilot and Hangouts, using video conferencing or video conferencing not from conference rooms, from end-user PCs. It does eat network traffic. Recently, Google added bandwidth controls to Hangouts, which has helped a lot if those users are conscientious and willing to self-throttle. But I do anticipate we'll need to increase a few of the ISP circuits in some of our remote sites to accommodate video conferencing.
Good. Here's an interesting one. Again, for Elliot, could you describe how you came to the conclusion that it was okay to open up Google Sites and Google Docs to people outside your company, and they wonder if you monitor usage at all, and if yes, how do you do that?
Sure. So generally, I'm the guy at Sanmina in favor of openness and collaboration. I have a counterpart, our chief of security, who's takes the opposite perspective, and we play devil's advocate for each other on nearly everything. But after interviewing users with different types of use cases, especially the engineering teams, it seemed that the benefits definitely outweighed the potential costs and risks. We already had segregated users that are handling regulatory sensitive information, things like either PII or FDA CFR controlled data or EAR, ITAR data in the defense space. So they didn't have any capability of sharing externally in the first place. And what we decided to do was allow it, but build some controls around it. We looked at a couple of external options. CloudLock previously, Aprigo was one of those. But because Google has pretty good APIs around docs and sites, we ended up just building our own utilities that will allow us to audit the external sharing and the sharing from outside to inside on demand, and we can actually see what's being shared, what the permissions are, forcibly change those permissions, or go talk to the owners or collaborators on given sites or docs. And that's been working for us so far, and I don't anticipate needing any additional controls at this point.
Good, thank you. Now, this one I'm happy came in. Could you give any specific use cases on the floor that you've seen Google Apps able to tackle?
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of cases where sites and docs have, and things like shared calendars have been helpful for things like scheduling, production control, these types of things. We've also, in the past, pushed data using Google Secure Data Connector or other APIs from internal MES systems through the firewall into Google Spreadsheets with chart widgets. So we've been able to take advantage of Google Spreadsheets and sites with those widgets to display real-time reports and real-time data from our manufacturing systems. So that's been one, but by far the biggest impact or bigger impact for us has been improving the quality of our data collectors from two-line LCD displays that were not rich at all with tablets. So we can do things now like display paperless work instructions to provide things like defect and repair guides for debug technicians and things like this that have improved efficiency, reduced paper in the manufacturing processes.
Good. All right, great. I'm going to ask this question. It's not assigned to anyone, but whoever feels best qualified, you can just jump in. Does cloud migration positively or negatively impact the integration of enterprise networks on the production or shop floor?
That's probably best for me. So, as I mentioned before, we haven't really seen any network traffic issues except for the video conferencing aspect. We actually, over the course of the last year, 2 years, and as part of the project plan for moving to Android tablets as shop floor data collectors, moved away from first RS-232 serial connections to Ethernet connections and to Wi-Fi, because the single biggest cost networking-wise in the shop floor for us was running drops every time there was a line reconfiguration. So we don't have to do that anymore, and that's been a pretty big cost savings and impact to the network support team, if not the network itself.
Good. Hey, I'm going to throw this one to Julia. Google is, of course, better known for its consumer technologies. How does Google play into the enterprise exactly?
Thanks, Travis. So we in Google Enterprise take Google's consumer products, and then we add the features and controls the businesses need. So Google has been providing these solutions for enterprises for the past 8 years. So this is not a new area for us, with over 5 million businesses already using Google solutions on the enterprise side. So this is from small businesses to the world's largest companies. So from Google Apps Productivity Suite to Search to Cloud Platform to our geospatial solutions, we offer an entire platform. And we believe by helping employees work the way they live, taking those consumer experiences, manufacturers will be able to move more fast and innovate.
Perfect, thank you. And okay, this one is my kind of questions. Back to Elliot, sorry. Where do you think the next frontier of productivity improvement will come from using this technology in the company? And really, what's the coolest aspect of it?
Well, I talked up our MDM and mobile deployment, but it's still really early days for us as far as mobile app development goes. And I think that we're going to see huge gains in the next 1 to 2 years in business process optimization and process efficiency through the use of mobile apps, whether it's things like workflows or data visualization in BI or alerting and notifications. I think that's going to be very big for us. We've also started working on a few other really neat additions to our MES suite of tools, but I'd rather not talk about those right now.
All right. Well, it looks like we're right up on the hour, so we're probably going to stop it here. Thank you, everyone, for all of your questions. That was a great Q&A session there. I'd like to remind you that this webinar will be available on the IndustryWeek.com website in the next few days. You can feel free to log in and view it again, or you can encourage your colleagues to view it, and also look for a follow-up email directing you to the recording. So, and then after that, I would just ask you to please join us for our next webinar. It's on April 17th, 2013, on how to reduce cost of security risk while growing your supply chain. With that, I'd just like to thank everyone for attending today and thank our speakers for their time. So have a great day, everyone.